Hi there, welcome to Black Stories 365. If you enjoy the story, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You have 10 minutes, the CEO snarled, her voice slicing through the silence like static before a storm. Fix the code or get out. And take your mother with you. The words echoed against the glass walls of StratusCore's top-floor boardroom, bouncing off black screens and pale faces. 40 monitors blinked lifeless, a graveyard of frozen code reflecting in every polished surface. Outside, the San Jose skyline burned in late afternoon light, unaware that a billion-dollar empire was dying inside. The boy in the chair, Miles Porter, 10 years old, sneakers dangling above the marble floor, didn't move. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as if waiting for the computer to breathe first. His mother, Denise, stood in the corner, her cleaning cart parked beside a chrome trash can, the yellow mop bucket glowing like a warning sign under the sterile lights. She looked out of place, and she knew it. In this room, power spoke in stock prices and Ivy League degrees. A janitor and her son were invisible until now. "You heard me," said Elaine Whitford, CEO and founder of StratusCore Systems. Her pearls trembled against her throat, her calm cracking for the first time in years. "We're losing millions every hour. Either you fix it, or security will escort you both out. If you feel for the boy standing there, hit like and comment. Stand with Miles. Let's remind the world that courage doesn't wear a business suit." Miles blinked, steady. He'd seen this keyboard before at night, after hours, when his mother wiped it clean and he traced the letters with a cloth. He'd memorized the layout like a secret map. Now that map might save 3,000 jobs. The experts circled him, men with gray suits and degrees framed in walnut. Women who wrote white papers about systems just like this one. None of them believed in the kid whose sneakers squeaked on the marble. The security chief whispered to Elaine, "This is ridiculous." She didn't answer. Pride had already cost her 3 days of darkness and $500 million. Desperation had no accent, it sounded the same on everyone. Miles whispered, barely audible. "Root access on the legacy service." The consultant scoffed. "He doesn't even know what that means." Elaine turned. "Give him what he asked for." The admin hesitated, then typed the command. Miles cracked his knuckles, the sound small but certain, and began to type. The keys clicked with the fragile rhythm of hope learning to walk again. His screen filled with cascading red error after error. Line after line of code bleeding across the monitor. It was chaos. But he didn't panic. He'd seen something like this before, on a borrowed library computer that crashed every time he ran his small homemade games. Adults saw disaster. Miles saw patterns. "Don't think about them," he told himself. "Don't think about the people watching or the way mom's hands are twisting that rag. Just listen to the system breathe." He scrolled back through the logs, eyes darting, searching not for what was broken but for what didn't belong. The seconds pulsed on the digital clock above him, 9:42, 9:41, 9:40, each tick like a heartbeat. And then he saw it. "There," he said softly. "That's wrong." The security chief leaned over his shoulder. "It's a syntax error, kid. We checked that already." Miles shook his head. "No, you checked the new code. This is buried in the foundation. Someone used a semicolon instead of a colon. It's trying to end a line instead of defining a variable. When the system overloaded, it called this function. And everything followed it off a cliff." Silence. Then disbelief. "You're saying?" The consultant stammered. "We lost 3 days because of punctuation." Miles pressed a key. "Happens all the time." The room held its breath as the screen flickered. A faint hum rose from the servers beyond the glass wall. Then another. The monitors lit up one by one, like city blocks coming back to life after a blackout. A single green bar climbed across the screen, slow but steady. "Primary systems stabilizing," the admin whispered, voice trembling. "Data streams returning." Elaine's throat tightened. 3 days of panic, endless calls from lawyers, tears in private bathrooms, all undone by a boy who hadn't even started high school. Denise let out a sound between a sob and a prayer. The experts, Harvard, MIT, Silicon Valley legends, just stared. Miles didn't smile. His eyes were still on the numbers, watching them rebuild themselves, but something else caught his attention. A steady stream of data leaving the network. Outbound, hidden beneath the recovery. That's strange, he murmured. Elaine turned. What is? He hesitated, then pointed at the lower graph. Someone's pulling your data while you're fixing the crash. The room froze again, the way it had 10 minutes ago. That can't be right, said the consultant. Our security layer is isolated. It isn't, Miles said. They're already inside. He clicked another window, tracing the faint pulse of the data flow. It's been happening for months. Elaine felt the bottom drop out of her brief relief. The boy's words were too calm, too sure. She remembered how she'd mocked him minutes earlier. How she'd almost sent security to throw him out. Miles looked up from the screen, meeting her eyes for the first time. If I can trace it, he said, I can stop them. And if you can't? He didn't answer. He just turned back to the keys, typing faster. The red countdown clock started again. Only now it wasn't counting toward failure. It was counting toward something worse that nobody could yet name. Elaine stood behind him, arms folded to hide her trembling hands, and realized the most expensive experts in the room had failed her, but a janitor's son might still save them all. The hum of the servers grew louder, almost alive. Outside, the California sun slid behind the glass towers, and the office lights dimmed just enough to see the reflection of a boy's face lit by green code. 10 minutes. 9. 8. Somewhere in that rhythm between keystrokes and heartbeats, StratusCore decided whether it would live or die. And the only sound was a child whispering to a billion-dollar machine, "Come on, talk to me." The lights in the boardroom buzzed faintly, the air thick with the heat of machines that had just woken from the dead. Elaine stood motionless behind the boy, one hand pressed against the glass table as if to anchor herself in the moment. Beyond the transparent wall, the city of San Jose was beginning to fade into evening, the glass towers turning to mirrors that reflected the trembling faces inside. Miles kept typing, his brow furrowed in quiet focus. Denise hadn't moved. Her hands gripped the handle of her cleaning cart so tightly, her knuckles were white. The sound of the mop bucket's plastic creak filled the space between keystrokes. Elaine's voice finally came, soft and hoarse. "How do you know where to look?" Miles didn't answer right away. He kept tracing the streams of code, following them down invisible corridors until he reached a dead end. He sat back in the chair, the rolling wheels squeaking under his sneakers. "Because I've seen it before," he said quietly. Elaine frowned, not understanding. But before she could ask, the room fell into a hush again. He had stopped typing, and his gaze had drifted not to the screens, but to the reflections in them. In the cold glass, he saw his mother, small against the corporate skyline. He remembered the sound of her shoes on tile, the rhythm of a mop sloshing in soapy water. The flashback arrived like a photograph unfolding in his mind. The night shift 2 weeks ago, when the building was a forest of blue light and humming machines. He'd been sitting in the janitor's break room, his backpack open beside a sandwich wrapped in foil. Denise had been scrubbing a coffee stain near the vending machine, humming a tune that he later learned was from Marvin Gaye. "Miles," she'd said without looking up, "you shouldn't be here this late." "You said you get lonely on Fridays," he'd replied, still clicking through lines of code on the old laptop she'd found in the recycling bin. "I'm keeping you company." "Company doesn't fix computers," she teased, wringing her mop. He grinned without looking away from the screen. "Maybe it does." When the elevator dinged down the hall, she'd hidden him behind the door, whispering, "You can't let the suits see you in here." He'd watched through the crack as 2 engineers passed, laughing about weekend bonuses. "The janitor's kid is probably smarter than half our interns." One had joked, and the other had laughed too loud, the kind of laugh that hurt even when it sounded like praise. Later that night, she'd found him asleep at the breakroom table, the laptop humming under his cheek. She hadn't woken him. She'd covered him with her work jacket, still smelling of lemon cleaner. The memory faded, and he was back in the boardroom, the air colder now. Elaine was watching him carefully. "You said you've seen it before," she repeated. "In the logs, maybe?" Miles shook his head. "No. I mean, patterns. Computers don't really crash without warning. They talk first. You just have to listen long enough to know the difference between noise and a cry for help." One of the executives muttered, "That's poetic, but not technical." Miles didn't even look up. "Maybe that's your problem." Elaine felt a flicker of irritation, but it melted into something she hadn't felt in years, respect mixed with discomfort. She looked at Denise, who stood frozen in the corner, afraid to breathe too loudly. "He shouldn't be here," the security chief said suddenly. "He's not cleared for any of this. He just cleared more in 10 minutes than your entire department did in 3 days, Elaine said sharply. "He stays." Denise's eyes widened. She wasn't sure if that was mercy or a new kind of punishment. Miles spoke again. "Who used to handle your security before the crash?" "Eric Nolan," the chief said. "Fired him last year. Sloppy work. Didn't see threats coming. Or maybe he saw them and left them behind," Miles said. "Like breadcrumbs." The boy's tone was even, but his stomach twisted. He didn't like being right this much. Denise finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Miss Whitford, if you're done with him, we'll go. He has school in the morning." Elaine hesitated. It was easy to forget that the boy in the chair had homework, that the woman beside the mop cart had spent years being invisible so her child could dream beyond the basement of this building. "Just a few more minutes," Elaine said. "Please." The word sounded strange in her mouth. Miles's eyes were still on the data map. "They've been draining your storage for months," he said. "Tiny amounts at a time, like someone taking a spoonful from a lake. It wouldn't show until the system crashed." "Why crash it now?" asked one of the engineers. "Because whoever's behind this wanted chaos," Miles said. "When everyone's panicking, no one notices the door closing behind them." His voice had dropped to a near whisper. Elaine watched him and thought, absurdly, of her son when he was that age, now grown. A lawyer who talked more about mergers than morals. The ache in her chest surprised her. "Do you think you can find who's doing it?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. "If I can keep it quiet." He glanced toward the blinking status lights on the server rack behind the glass wall. "They're listening for noise. If I make one wrong move, they'll vanish again." "You mean like ghosts?" Denise asked gently. Miles smiled at her. "Like very rude ghosts." The tension cracked just enough for a few tired laughs. The consultants exchanged uncertain looks. Elaine took a slow breath. "All right, Miles. Do what you can. I'll have everyone else stand down." The others protested, but her raised hand silenced them. Power, when wielded quietly, still carried its own gravity. She stepped aside, watching the boy dive back into code. For a few minutes, the only sounds were the rhythmic clacking of keys and the faint hum of the HVAC. Denise stood by the wall, head bowed, whispering something that might have been a prayer or just a mother's wish. The security chief crossed his arms. "You're gambling the company on a janitor's kid." "Maybe," Elaine said. "But he's the only one in this room not defending his resume." The city outside darkened completely now. The skyline blurred into streaks of light as office windows turned to mirrors. Miles blinked hard to stay awake. He felt the edges of exhaustion. The way light fades on a monitor left too long without touch. He sipped the paper cup of water his mother had brought him, its rim bending under his fingers. "Almost there," he whispered. Elaine leaned closer. "What are you seeing?" "Connections that shouldn't exist," he said. "Like hidden hallways between servers. Someone built them months ago. They don't even use your IP ranges, they bounce through fake ones, like mirrors in a funhouse." "Can you trace it?" "Not yet. But I can make them think I'm not looking." Denise's eyes filled with worry. "Miles, don't push too hard. It's not your job to fix their mess." He didn't look away from the screen. "If I stop now, Mom, the mess keeps hurting people." Elaine looked at her, then back at the boy, realizing how absurd it was that a 10-year-old had to carry that kind of conscience. It embarrassed her. It inspired her. And it terrified her. "He's right," she said quietly. "It's our mess. But tonight, maybe we just need someone unafraid of it." The hum of the machines deepened, almost like the room itself was breathing with him. Miles adjusted the code parameters, making tiny shifts invisible to anyone not looking for them. "There," he murmured. "Now let's see if the ghosts come out." The minutes stretched, heavy with waiting. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed through the city, the sound bending off the glass. The digital clock blinked 9:56 p.m. A small light on the console flickered green, then red. A signal. They were still in. Miles smiled faintly. Got you. Elaine leaned forward. Who? Someone who used to know this system too well, he said. Someone who left fingerprints everywhere except where they mattered. He didn't say the name yet, though it hovered like a shadow at the back of his mind. Eric Nolan. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the hum, to the city, to his own heartbeat matching the rhythm of the machine. He wasn't supposed to be here. Neither was his mother. But sometimes the people who clean up the world are the only ones who really see its dirt. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, I'll find him. Elaine heard it, though he hadn't meant her to. And for the first time in 3 days, she believed that maybe they still had a chance. The next morning, the sun hit the StratusCore building like a spotlight searching for guilt. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and recycled panic. Elaine hadn't left her office all night. Her pearl necklace sat coiled beside a stack of reports she couldn't bring herself to read. The boy's discovery, those quiet, stolen streams of data had cracked open something she didn't yet understand. She had spent her career trusting systems built by men with flawless resumes, and last night a 10-year-old had made them all look like amateurs. She stared through the glass wall at the city still waking, where everything looked clean from far enough away. Miles and Denise arrived just after 8. Walking through the lobby as if crossing sacred ground. The security guard gave them a strange look but didn't stop them. Word had already spread about the janitor's son who saved the network. Denise held her head a little higher than usual. But Miles only looked tired, his backpack bumping against his leg, his eyes still carrying the glow of monitors. Elaine stepped out of her office when she saw them. Miles, she said, voice softer than last night. Come with me. Denise hesitated. Ma'am, he's just a boy. He hasn't slept. Elaine glanced at her. Neither have I. They entered the control room where the wall of screens pulsed in soft green. The experts had returned, pale and polite now, their arrogance scrubbed raw. We're running full diagnostics. The lead engineer explained. Everything seems stable, but the logs still show intermittent anomalies. Elaine turned to Miles. Show them what you found. He slid into the chair, shoulders hunched like a musician about to play an instrument he'd built himself. The men exchanged glances, half irritated, half curious. He pulled up the data routes and pointed to the faint threads pulsing between servers. They didn't just steal data, he said. They left holes tunnels. See these? He zoomed in on a cluster of blinking nodes. Each one is an exit route. They've been siphoning little bits for months, like a leak you don't notice until the floor caves in. One of the consultants adjusted his glasses. That's impossible. Our firewall would have caught that. Miles didn't look up. Your firewall was built by someone who knew how to step around it. The silence that followed had a weight. Elaine folded her arms. Eric Nolan. The name hung in the air like smoke. The security chief shifted uncomfortably. We fired him for negligence, not sabotage. And now we know he left a gift on his way out, Elaine said. She turned back to Miles. Can you trace him? Maybe. But I need quiet access and no interference. If he realizes we're watching, he'll cover his tracks. The consultant frowned. You're suggesting we let a child handle a live investigation? Elaine met his eyes. I'm suggesting we let the only person who noticed the problem finish what he started. Denise looked from one face to another, unsure if pride or fear should win. Please, she said, just promise me he won't get hurt. Miles smiled faintly. Mom, I'm sitting at a desk. That's what scares me. She murmured. He logged in again, fingers moving with that same unself-conscious rhythm that made even the professionals lean closer. He muted his breath, chasing signals down virtual corridors, tracing fragments of code that shimmered like footprints on water. The room faded around him. He wasn't in San Jose anymore. He was in the network, a maze of invisible light where patterns spoke a language he understood better than people. Somewhere deep in that maze, he felt resistance and echo answering him. Someone was still there. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He's active, he whispered. What? Elaine asked. He's back in. He's watching us watch him. On the main display, a message blinked across the screen in bold white letters. Hello again, StratusCore. Then another line appeared. Miss me? Gasps filled the room. Denise clutched her chest. Elaine's jaw tightened. Cut the connection. The security chief ordered. No. Miles shouted, louder than anyone expected. That's what he wants. If you sever it, he'll vanish. Let me talk to him. You can't negotiate with a criminal. The chief barked. I'm not negotiating, Miles said. I'm distracting him. His fingers flew. A new window opened, and lines of text scrolled across like the beginning of an argument between ghosts. Who are you? Miles typed. A reminder. The reply came. Systems fall when pride rises. She should have listened. He's talking about you, Miles said to Elaine. Her face didn't move. Ask him what he wants. What do you want? Miles typed. To be seen, came the answer. Then the cursor blinked. Another file began to open automatically. Miles intercepted it before it loaded. He's trying to dump data again, he said. I can stop it, but I need admin override. You have it, Elaine said instantly. Denise whispered, be careful. Miles's world shrank to the glow of the screen and the faint taste of electricity in the air. He rerouted the flow through a decoy server, letting Eric think he was winning. The building's lights flickered once, twice. He's flooding us, the engineer said. Bandwidth maxed. He's testing, Miles said. He wants to see how we'll react. He's not stealing anymore, he's performing. The realization hit Elaine like a chill. Performing? He wants an audience, Miles said. He's showing potential buyers what he can do. Elaine's stomach twisted. He's selling his attack. The room filled with the low thrum of fear. It was suddenly clear this wasn't about StratusCore, it was about reputation, power, the thrill of control. Eric Nolan wasn't hiding. He was advertising. Miles, can you shut him out? Not yet, he said. If I hit him too hard, he'll crash our system again. But if I pretend to lose... He didn't finish. Elaine saw what he meant. Do it, she said. He slowed his typing deliberately, letting error messages bloom like fake bruises across the screen. The other side responded fast, pushing harder. More data leaked, then steadied. Miles whispered, come closer. Come closer. On a separate console, a faint trace appeared, an IP signature. Masked but wobbling. He followed it, layer by layer, until a fragment slipped through. Miami, Florida. He smiled. Got you. Then, as if feeling the trap, the enemy connection spiked violently. Alarms wailed. The monitors bled red. He's trying to fry the servers, an engineer shouted. Pull the plug. No. Miles yelled. Give me 2 more seconds. He typed faster than he ever had, redirecting traffic through backup systems, creating digital mirrors that reflected the attack back toward its source. The room was chaos, voices overlapping, alarms screaming, but inside his head it was quiet. Just him and the pattern. And then, suddenly, everything went dark. The monitors died. The hum stopped. Elaine's heart froze. Miles? She whispered. In the blackness, his voice came calm, certain. It's okay. The lights flickered back. One by one. The main screen glowed blue again, a single line of text blinking steady. Primary functions restored. Denise covered her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. Elaine exhaled, her hands trembling. What happened? He ran, Miles said softly. But not before he told me enough. Told you? He nodded. He left a message in the packet header. Said he'd be back. Said next time, he won't aim at your company. He'll aim at your name. Elaine felt something inside her harden, the cold edge of responsibility, the sting of truth. She had built this empire to be untouchable, and now a ghost had reminded her that no fortress stands forever. Then we find him first, she said. Miles looked at her, the green reflection of code still in his eyes. We will. Outside, the California morning shimmered against the glass towers, bright and merciless. Somewhere far away, in a dark room lit by stolen light, a man named Eric Nolan watched his own screens and smiled, waiting for the next move. Night came early that day, the kind of heavy twilight that pressed against the windows like a warning. The StratusCore tower glowed over San Jose, but inside the building, no one felt safe. Every flicker of a monitor looked like a threat. Elaine had called in the FBI's cyber division. Yet they moved slowly, shackled by protocol. Miles sat at a corner workstation, a blanket draped over his shoulders, sipping cold cocoa his mother brought from the cafeteria. He had been staring at streams of code for hours, eyes red but unblinking. Denise sat nearby, silent, folding and unfolding the same napkin in her lap. Elaine stood by the glass wall, watching the city lights like a woman searching for meaning in noise. The word Miami hung in her mind like a promise. Eric Nolan was still out there. He said he'd come back. Miles murmured, voice thin. He will. Elaine turned. Not if we stop him first. He shook his head. He's not scared. He's proud. She didn't answer. Pride was something she understood too well. It had been the root of her empire and the seed of its near destruction. When the intercom crackled, everyone froze. Miss Whitford. The guard's voice came, low and uncertain. We've got movement in the data room. Someone's accessing the secure servers. Elaine's stomach clenched. Impossible, she said. They're isolated. They were, Miles said. Already on his feet. Until he used your own updates against you. He ran toward the control room, sneakers squeaking on the tile. Denise called after him, but he was already gone. Elaine followed, her heels clicking like gunshots in the empty hallway. The data room door stood ajar, faint light spilling out. Inside, rows of servers blinked like 1,000 artificial eyes. Miles sat at the nearest terminal, hands flying over the keys. He's in again, he said. This time he's not just stealing. He's rewriting your system. What do you mean rewriting? Elaine asked, stepping closer. He's embedding himself into your core functions, Miles said. He wants StratusCore to run on his code so he can own it from the inside. Can we shut him out? Not without crashing everything, he said. He's smart. He's left traps everywhere. Elaine rubbed her temples. This is a war zone. Miles didn't look up. Then we fight back. The main monitor flickered, and Eric's message appeared again. Hello, StratusCore. Round 2. Beneath it, a new line scrolled. Tick-tock. The lights dimmed, and the server fans roared to life. Data streams began to surge in all directions. The building trembled faintly as the load spiked. Denise arrived, breathless. Miles. Mom, stay back, he said. It's okay. I've got it. No, you don't, Elaine said. He's winning. Not yet. Miles's fingers blurred. He opened 3 terminals at once, tracing pathways through loops of encrypted commands. He's using the same structure he built years ago, he muttered. It's like fighting someone who knows your house better than you do. Eric's next message appeared. You can't save it, Elaine. But you can watch it burn. The monitors turned red, data flying faster than the eye could follow. Denise flinched as a sharp pop sounded from one of the drives. Smoke drifted from a vent. He's overheating the processors. The engineer shouted. He'll burn the hardware. Then cool it, Elaine snapped. Dump the heat to backup systems. No good, the engineer said. He's locked us out. Miles leaned closer to the screen, his face pale in the crimson light. I can override him. But it'll mean tricking the system into thinking he's me. That's too dangerous, Denise said. If it backfires, then he wins. Miles said simply. Elaine knelt beside him, lowering her voice. Can you do it? I think so. Then do it. He nodded, and began typing again. The room fell silent except for the hum of machines and the quick tap of keys. Time seemed to slow. He created a shadow account. Masked it under a decoy process. And injected a script that mimicked Eric's code. If it worked, the system would see Miles as the intruder and Eric as a ghost. If it failed, everything would collapse. The seconds dragged. Denise's whisper carried through the room. Lord, please, let him be faster. Eric's final taunt appeared on the main display. Goodbye, StratusCore. Miles hit enter. The screens went black. The building seemed to exhale. Then, one by one, the monitors lit up again, their colors soft and steady. The data flow normalized. Miles blinked at the screen. It worked, he breathed. He's locked out. Cheers erupted around him, but Elaine didn't join them. She was staring at the last line of code on the screen, a signature buried deep inside the system. 3 simple letters. E.N. He left something, she said. Miles scrolled, Found the code fragment. It wasn't a virus. It was a message. You still don't get it. This isn't about data. It's about truth. Elaine frowned. Truth? Miles leaned back. He's saying you built something that hides things. He's not just angry. He's exposing people. Elaine stiffened. That's ridiculous. But her eyes betrayed uncertainty. Miles didn't push further. He was too tired. Too aware of the weight in her silence. He's gone for now, he said. But he's not done. The air felt heavier, as if the machines themselves were listening. Denise touched her son's shoulder. You need to rest. He nodded, finally letting his hands fall from the keyboard. Elaine stood, adjusting her blazer. You've saved us twice now, Miles. Whatever happens next, you won't face it alone. He looked up at her, unsure whether to believe her. Eric's not just hacking your system, he said. He's hacking your story. She frowned. What does that mean? He wants people to see you the way he does, Miles said quietly. Not as a leader, but as a liar. Elaine turned toward the window, the skyline glittering beyond her reflection. Then he'll fail, she said. Because I built this company on trust. But even as she spoke, the screens in the corner flickered again just once, like a blink. Miles noticed. He didn't tell her. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off. A rare California storm building over the bay. It was as if the world itself was warning them that nothing buried stays quiet forever. Later, when the engineers left and the hum of servers softened to a whisper, Elaine remained in the room, alone. She stared at the faint reflection of herself on the dark screen, and for a moment she saw not the CEO but the woman who had started StratusCore in her garage 20 years ago, hungry, ambitious, certain that control was safety. Now control was an illusion. Behind her, Miles had fallen asleep in a chair. His hoodie pulled tight, the glow of the monitor painting his small face in pale blue light. Denise sat beside him, stroking his hair gently. Elaine turned back to the screen, where the final line of Eric's code still lingered like a shadow. About truth. She whispered the words to herself, unsure if she feared them or needed them. What truth, Eric? She asked the empty room. The servers did not answer. Only the rain began. Soft against the windows. And the night folded around them like a secret too big to keep. The storm broke before dawn, hard rain drumming on the glass walls like the city itself was keeping time with StratusCore's heartbeat. Elaine hadn't slept. She sat at her desk, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled to her elbows, staring at the phrase still blinking faintly on her monitor. This isn't about data. It's about truth. The words had nested in her brain all night, each one a mosquito bite she couldn't scratch. Around her, the building hummed like a body trying to forget trauma. Downstairs, the janitorial staff moved through the halls with quiet efficiency. Denise was among them, exhaustion carving new lines into her face. She had let Miles sleep at home for a few hours, but not before promising she would call him if anything changed. When the elevator chimed, Elaine looked up. Miles stepped out, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes bright in that sleepless way that only children could manage. You shouldn't be here yet, she said, though there was no conviction in her tone. You said he'd come back. He replied simply. If he does, I want to be ready. Denise followed, still wearing her uniform, a paper cup of coffee trembling in her hand. Miss Whitford, I told him to rest, but you know my boy. Elaine smiled weakly. He takes after the stubborn people in this building. That's not a compliment, ma'am, Denise said, but there was affection in her voice. The lights flickered once. Everyone froze. The security chief's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got abnormal activity again, massive incoming traffic. It's coordinated. Elaine's blood went cold. Is it Nolan? We don't know, came the reply. It's bigger than before. Miles was already moving toward the control room. He's not alone anymore, he said. He sold his tools. Now other people are using them. In the nerve center, screens erupted with color. Attack alerts stacked faster than the admins could read them. StratusCore's systems weren't being stolen from, they were being used. He's hijacked your infrastructure, Miles said, typing furiously. He's turning your servers into weapons. Against who? Elaine demanded. Against everyone, Miles said. Look, he's routing through hospitals, city grids, even airports. He's showing off again. Outside, thunder rolled across the bay, and a bolt of lightning lit up the skyline. The power flickered. Denise gripped the back of her son's chair. Miles. This is too much. I can do it, he said, more to himself than anyone else. His fingers blurred, opening network maps, redirecting packets of data. Elaine leaned over his shoulder, watching lines of code race past. He's using mirrors, Miles murmured. Every time I block one path, it splits into two, like Hydra heads. Then cut them all at once, Elaine said. I'm trying. You need help. No, he said sharply. Too many hands will make noise. He'll sense it. The building groaned as servers overloaded again. Red lights flashed. Alarms wailed. The consultants shouted into phones, engineers barked commands, but none of it mattered. Miles was the only one who could see the pattern. He stopped typing for a second, eyes narrowing. Wait, he whispered. He's taunting us. He left breadcrumbs again. He traced the code backward, following faint signals that threaded through false addresses, until one small pulse stood out, a heartbeat hiding under the noise. He smiled faintly. He's careless when he's proud. Where? Elaine asked. Same signature, Miles said. Miami. But now I can see the subnet. He's not masking the device this time. He ran a trace, fingers moving faster than breath. A number appeared on the screen, coordinates. Elaine grabbed her phone. Get the FBI on the line now. But before she could speak, a new message appeared on the main monitor. You shouldn't have brought the boy back. The building lights dimmed again. Every screen turned red. Denise gasped. He's watching us. He's bluffing, Elaine said, but she didn't sound sure. Another message followed. Truth burns, doesn't it? And then video windows opened across the wall of screens, security feeds from inside StratusCore, hallways, stairwells, the lobby. Cameras they thought were offline. On every feed, a shadowy figure moved, Eric Nolan, or someone wearing his face, recorded and replayed. Denise shivered. He's everywhere. Miles leaned forward. No, it's pre-recorded. He wants us to think he's inside the building. He typed another command, isolating one of the feeds. But he slipped. This timestamp, he left it in the metadata. These aren't real time. Elaine exhaled. Then where is he? Still in Miami, Miles said. And now we know exactly where. He hit another key, sending the location packet to the FBI contact he'd saved earlier. The room fell into silence except for the storm outside. For a heartbeat, Elaine thought it was over. Then every monitor went black. Miles? It's okay, he said quickly. I rerouted power. He can't kill us now. But the system didn't restart. Instead, a single line of text appeared in the center of the screen. Nice move, kid. Let's see how fast you really are. The lights exploded in white. Sirens screamed as the building's backup generators roared to life. He's overloading the grid. An engineer yelled. If he keeps this up, the servers will melt. I can counter it, Miles said. By reflecting it back. Elaine frowned. Reflecting? Using his own attack against him, Miles said. Like holding up a mirror to sunlight. That's risky. The chief warned. You could destroy our entire network. Miles looked up, eyes steady. Or save everyone else's. Elaine hesitated only a second before nodding. Do it. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Miles worked faster than he thought possible. His mind running in layers. Throttle, redirect, reflect. He built a virtual funnel, catching Nolan's attack and pushing it back along the path it came from. Data roared like wind in a tunnel. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Denise clutched her chest, whispering prayers. Elaine stood behind the boy, the glow of the screen painting both their faces green. Almost there, Miles murmured. Come on. Come on. Then suddenly, silence. The alarms stopped. The hum softened. The screens turned blue again. The red lines that had bled across the monitors faded away. Miles blinked, breath ragged. It's done. Are you sure? Elaine asked. Positive. I bounced the entire attack back through his network. It'll overload his system, not ours. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. It was the FBI contact. She answered on speaker. Miss Whitford, this is Agent Keener. We've located the source you sent. We're moving in now. There was shouting in the background. Then the sound of boots and doors breaking. We've got him, the agent said. Repeat. We have Eric Nolan in custody. The room erupted with relief. Denise sank into a chair, crying openly this time. Elaine closed her eyes, her first real breath in days escaping her lungs. Miles slumped forward, head resting on the keyboard. Elaine touched his shoulder. You did it. He smiled weakly. We did it. Outside, the rain eased into a drizzle, the storm's rage spent. In Miami, agents hauled Eric Nolan out of a dark apartment filled with monitors. One screen still glowed with lines of text, his last transmission. You can't erase the truth. Back in San Jose, Elaine stared at the same words, her reflection shimmering in the glass. Maybe not, she said quietly. But we can choose what to do with it. She looked at Miles and Denise, two people who had entered her world as ghosts and left as heroes. This company belongs to more than code now, she said. It belongs to people who still believe in right and wrong. Miles looked up at her, eyes heavy but hopeful. Then make it mean something. Elaine nodded. We will. Outside, dawn began to break over the valley, soft and gold, touching the glass towers that had once felt cold and untouchable. Inside StratusCore, the hum of servers steadied into a calm, steady pulse, like a heart finding its rhythm again. And for the first time, Elaine felt not like a woman defending her empire, but like someone finally learning how to begin again. 3 weeks later, the StratusCore building stood like a glass monument washed clean by rain. The lobby smelled of new paint and strong coffee. Reporters still lingered outside, trying to turn headlines into something simpler than the truth. Cyberattack foiled by janitor's son. They'd written. Boy genius saves Silicon Valley giant. But inside the building, the story was quieter, more human. Elaine walked the corridors with a stillness that made people lower their voices. The CEO, who once lived on control, now carried a kind of humility that unsettled her board more than the breach itself. She stopped by the server room door, where the hum was softer these days, almost gentle. On a small stool beside the console, Miles sat with headphones around his neck, scrolling through lines of code. Denise mopped the floor nearby, humming under her breath. The rhythm of her work was the same as always, but now people greeted her when they passed. Elaine leaned against the doorway. You shouldn't have to come in on weekends, she said. Miles shrugged. I like quiet buildings. He glanced at the monitor. Besides, I'm making something. Another game? Sort of. A tool that watches for patterns people miss. So nobody gets blindsided again. Elaine smiled faintly. A watchdog for watchdogs. Exactly. He turned back to the screen, his fingers moving gently, not rushing. The trauma of that night still clung to him, though he wouldn't admit it. He slept less, laughed less, and sometimes paused mid-sentence like listening for something only he could hear. Denise noticed, of course. But she also knew some silences had to be respected. She looked up at Elaine now, her voice low. They treating you better upstairs? They're trying, Elaine said. That's new for all of us. Denise chuckled softly. Maybe you scared them straight. No, Elaine said, watching her reflection in the glass. You and your son did that. Denise dipped the mop into the bucket, wringing it out with slow precision. I just raised him to notice the dirt other people step over. Elaine thought about that for a long moment. She wanted to say thank you, but the word felt too small for what she owed. Instead, she said, I'd like to offer you both something permanent. Denise froze. Ma'am? Miles deserves a future that matches his gift. I want to fund his education scholarship, full support. And for you, I'd like to move you to facilities supervisor. Better pay. No more night shifts. Denise's eyes filled before she could stop them. You don't have to do that. Yes, Elaine said gently. I do. Miles looked up from his screen. Mom? She smiled through her tears. Looks like we're moving up in the world. He grinned, but then his expression changed. Wait. Miss Whitford, did the FBI ever say what happened to Nolan? Elaine's smile faltered. He's in custody. Facing multiple charges. But. She hesitated. He's talking. A lot. About what he calls the truth. He claims StratusCore hid something years ago, a prototype project that went wrong. He says the crash was his revenge for being silenced. Miles frowned. Is it true? Elaine looked past him, at the blinking lights of the servers. Once, maybe. We built systems that could predict behavior, track choices, even influence markets. It was supposed to help hospitals manage supply chains, but some people wanted more control than they should ever have. When I shut it down, Eric lost his position. He thought I betrayed him. Maybe I did. You were protecting people, Miles said. Maybe, she whispered. But truth doesn't disappear just because we hide from it. The words hung heavy in the room. For the first time since the attack, she felt the full weight of what Eric's last message had meant. It wasn't about revenge, it was about consequences. Sometimes, she said softly, justice isn't clean. It just feels like survival. Miles closed his laptop and looked at her. Then maybe it's time you tell your story before someone else does. Elaine met his gaze, startled by how much wisdom lived behind that child's calm. She nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. That afternoon, she called a press conference. Cameras filled the glass atrium, lights reflecting off every surface. Elaine stepped up to the podium with no notes, no script. 3 weeks ago, she began, StratusCore was attacked by someone who once helped build it. The story you've heard is about a boy who saved us. That's true. But it's not the whole truth. She paused, feeling the collective breath of the room. We created technology that grew faster than our conscience. We tried to bury our mistakes. Someone I once trusted tried to expose them the wrong way. But he was right about one thing: truth matters. And it belongs to everyone, not just those in power. The reporters scribbled. Cameras flashed. Elaine continued, her voice steady now. Today, StratusCore will open its research archives to federal review. No more secrets. No more shadows. If this company is to survive, it must earn the trust it lost. Outside the glass walls, people gathered on the sidewalk, watching through the rain. Denise stood beside Miles at the back of the room, her hand resting on his shoulder. When Elaine stepped down from the podium, the applause was hesitant at first, then stronger. Miles whispered, "She did it." Denise smiled. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't fixing code, it's fixing people. Later, after the crowd dispersed and the cameras dimmed, Elaine found them in the quiet lobby. "You were right, Miles," she said. "He forced me to face something I should have faced long ago." "He was wrong about one thing though," the boy said. "He thought truth destroys. But maybe it heals too." Elaine nodded. "I hope so." She glanced at Denise. "You'll both be staying on, I hope?" "We will," Denise said. "Though I might ask for a new mop. This one's seen too much." Elaine laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. As they talked, the late sunlight poured through the glass, turning the marble floor gold. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of how close it had come to chaos. Inside, the hum of the servers was steady again, a rhythm, not a threat. That night, long after everyone left, Elaine returned to her office. On her desk lay an envelope with no name. Inside was a printed line of code, Eric Nolan's signature. And beneath it, a handwritten note. "Truth never dies. It just waits for courage." She stared at it for a long time, then placed it back in the envelope and locked it in her drawer. She didn't know if it was meant as a warning or a benediction. Maybe both. Downstairs, the cleaning lights flickered on. Denise's laughter echoed faintly through the hall, mingling with the soft scrape of a mop. Miles's voice followed, asking about something he'd seen in his code, a tiny bug that made the program smile when it started. Elaine closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what she couldn't control. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, redemption had found a shape. Not perfect. Not clean. But real. Somewhere across the ocean, in a secure facility, Eric Nolan sat in a white interrogation room, staring at his reflection in the one-way glass. He smiled faintly. "She told the truth," he murmured. The agent across from him looked confused. "About what?" Eric leaned forward, his voice low. "About what it costs." Back in San Jose, morning began again, and StratusCore's logo lit the skyline bright, steady, rebuilt. And beneath its glow, A boy and his mother walked home under the fading stars, their shadows stretching long and proud across the wet pavement.